morning. Good morning. Morning, everybody's out there, yes. Hello, hello. Welcome to Two Rivers Unitarian Universalist Community. My name is Sally Sparhawk, and I'll be serving as the worship associate. It's a blessing and a privilege to be with you today. We are delighted that Aaron Brown joins us in the pulpit. Our worship theme for November is repair. Today, Aaron will be speaking on how, you can't hear me?
True. We cannot hear you.
Got it. Let me start over. How about that? Is that better? Thank you. Thank you. So good morning. My name is Sally Sparhawk, and I'm the worship associate today. It's a blessing and a privilege to be with you today. Our worship theme for November is repair. And we are delighted that Aaron will be joining us. Today, he will be speaking on how ecologies repair themselves. In this service, we will examine how ecologies recover from massive traumas like fires, floods, and volcanic eruptions to better understand how we might work on our communities and our electorate. Still more? Okay, am I here now? No. Okay, I'll try and swallow it. Okay. All right. Today, what? Can you hear me? Oh, start all over? I can do that. Sure. I'm not? Is that better? They aren't used to little people like me up here. Are you sure I can't? That's better. Oh, great. We'll get some real changes when Aaron comes up here. All right. We're starting from the top. Got it? Good morning. I'm Sally Sparhawk, and I'll be the worship associate today, and it's a privilege and a blessing to be with you. We're delighted that Aaron joins us today from the pulpit, and our worship theme for November is repair. Today, Aaron will be speaking on how ecologies repair themselves. In this service, we will examine how ecologies recover from massive traumas like fires, floods, and volcanic eruptions, to better understand how we might work on our communities and our electorate in the wake of a scarring political season. We will also spend some time on repairing and caring for ourselves, noting where and how we have been impacted by the tension and pressures of the preceding months and by the results of this week's election. If we have any guests who feel comfortable introducing themselves or being introduced, we invite you to do so. Or, if you prefer to sit quietly, I hope you feel our warm embrace. For guests online, please use the chat to introduce yourselves. Do we have anyone new here today? Oh, good. Would you like to introduce yourself? Thank you, Ed. Welcome. Dave Reed. Thank you, Dave. Welcome. Anyone else? I'm Harris. Hi, Harris. Glad you're here with us. I want to express our gratitude also to Bill and Nancy Flood for serving as both setup and coffee hour hosts. They're doing it all today. Thank you to our musicians, Olivia Pevnek, Delaney Myers, Mika Schrupa, and Paul Dankers. And much gratitude to Seth Brown for learning to fly Zoom and YouTube, allowing people to join us online, like me. I was online last week. Thanks to Liza Ferrier for operating our in-person slideshow. If you would like to connect with our community, please leave your contact information on the back of the order of service. We also invite those with pastoral and caring committee concerns to use the back of the order of service as well. I invite your attention to the upcoming services and the announcements in the order of service, and I'd like to have Rob Benedetti come up and give us an update on the auction.
Thank you, Sally. Yes, I did want to give us an update on the very successful auction that we pulled off. We cleared over $13,000 on our auction, so I think we met our budget expectations, and that's to be congratulated. And I wanted to give special thanks to those people who worked so hard for it. Sandy Reef and Jan Quint procured so many of the items that brought in money. Udell Stuckey helped buy the food and I think that went over well. And all Paul Dankers and Mika Sherpa, who provided incredible technical support and brought us out of the analog and into the digital age. And all others who participated, whose names I have not given credit for. Thank you so much. It was a great episode. On another note, a little more dour, I wanted to announce to the congregation that we did lose a member. Joanne Clemens passed away 2 days ago. She was in California with her daughter, I believe. She was a long-term and beautiful member of our community, and she's gone on to another level. So we just wanted to announce that to the community.
Thank you, Rob. And many of you know that Paul is the music director for the 25th Annual Putnam Spelling Bee, which last performance is today at 2, so you can still go. What many of you don't know is he's been pressed into service and now an actor because someone's in the hospital with pneumonia.
He was terrific.
Oh, great. You need to go today at 2 to see him. But Paul and Mika ask that you keep your social engagement with him till next week so that they can dash out of here right after the service to be on time for their performance. So thank you for doing that. Now, please silence your phones, watches, and the like as we move into worship. I'd like to read a piece by Reverend Maureen Killeran titled, "In Need of Healing." Whoops. Welcome, you who come in need of healing. You who are confused or have been betrayed. Welcome with your problems and your pain. Welcome to your joys and your wonderings. Welcome your need for hope, your longing for assurance. Instead of answers, here may you find safety for your questions. Instead of promises, may you find community for your struggles and people with hands and hearts to join you in engaging the challenges and the changes of our day. Next, we will have a musical prelude by Olivia Pevick and Delaney Myers, Raven Song.
Early this morning, just before dawning, a raven sits taking in the view. And I'd like to sit next to him, ask him where he's been. have the truth. Oh, but gravity's got hold of me. I have only ever known the earth. And if I could taste his easy breeze, would I ever question my own worth? From where I stand, I can see the road that's ahead of me soon becomes winding and steep. And I wonder if I can climb it, creeping 1 inch at a time. Will this be the summit that I seek? If I could ride the desert sky, I wouldn't have to cover so much ground. Instead, I eat the dust and gather rust, feel every mile that I pound. To me, every single living thing is needed, and the way we make's a chance we take. We only get to choose the way we greet it. And so I take another step, strip off an old regret. Imagine I've got broad black wings.
For our chapel lighting, I'm going to read The Great Turning by Lisa Garcia Sampson. In these wild, historic, and uncertain times, we gather to remember who we are, who we belong to, and what we are called to do. As we light this challenge, we kindle the spirit of the Great Turning, the movement for justice alive in the nation today. May we feel it in our bones and in the stillness of this hour. May we sense it calling our name. Thank you. Please rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn. We will remain standing through our sung aspiration. Hymn number 128, For All That Is Our Life.
Which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. us bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks for all that is our life. For all that is our life, we sing all things in praise, for our life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
And now our covenant. Love is the spirit of this community, and service is its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Our sung aspiration is hymn 123, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of love, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the streams of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the giving life, shape of justice, roots only grow, wings set me free, Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Please be seated.
It is such a pleasure and a joy in dark times to be with such bright faces. Thank you all for having me back. On May 18th, 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted. As the earth shook, hurricane-force winds of fire and poison gas tore across the landscape, torching old-growth forests and wetland habitats, annihilating the creatures and setting aflame every bit of organic matter in their path. The flames didn't last too long, though. A downpour of rock, mud, and ash smothered them, choking the rivers and burying the land in meters of debris. Through this devastation, as the earth fissured apart, pyroclastic flows of molten rock gushed forth, sterilizing the ground with temperatures of up to 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. I wonder how one might sum up such a decimating reign of horror and affliction in a word. Volcano sounds almost too tame. After this week, I might suggest Tuesday. And I apologize if some in this room are of a different political persuasion. I'll be speaking from my perspective, but please know that all are truly welcome here. Whether you are apolitical or you are pleased with the election's results for whatever reasons, you are welcome here. I am hopeful we will embrace each other in this community regardless of whether we are feeling grief or anger, terror or bewilderment, relief or exultation, exhaustion or despair, you are welcome here. For my part, I am feeling all of those things in an ever-shifting swirl. So, back to our discussion of completely politically neutral ecology. In the aftermath of the eruption, biologists kept a close eye on the wasteland around Mount St. Helens, eager to see what nature would do with its gaping wound. What they found was a story of resilience and restoration far superior to anything our most talented architects or engineers could have accomplished, even with billions of dollars at their disposal. And it all began with the humble prairie lupine. This eager little plant, which puts forth tiny spires of delicate purple flowers, was the first pioneer to take up residence on the waste, pushing its roots into the ash and fixing nitrogen from the atmosphere into what would become a new layer of soil. While the lupine is typically host to butterflies and bees, the first tiny creatures to join these plant pioneers were actually wingless. I hope you will be enchanted rather than horrified to learn that all across the world there are tiny little spiders who spin out these long gossamer threads to catch the wind and float away for parts unseen. These so-called ballooning spiders drift until the breeze sets them down, and some of these adventurous arachnids landed on the lupine. They then spun their delicate little webs, trapping both insects and organic debris, all of which fed the earth. Some of that debris were the seeds of the fast-growing, shallow-rooted fireweed and pearly everlasting. These plants covered the ash like a protective scab, with growths up to 24 inches tall, providing shade and structure for more seeds to take root. Collectively, these pioneers are called facilitators by ecologists who study the process of repair, which is also known as ecological succession. It involves several waves of species interconnecting and supporting each other to develop more and more diverse, robust, and resilient ecosystems. The nitrogen and industrious root work from the first wave of pioneers can turn even sterile ash and rock into receptive soil. Hardier bushes with deeper roots are then enabled to grow, which in turn invite more and more birds and squirrels to stop by, who drop the seeds and nuts of trees as they pass. This is how forests rebuild themselves. Foresters have caught on and developed a process called nucleated forestry. Rather than planting rows upon rows of saplings at great expense and with only monoculture on their minds, foresters these days are starting to plant little islands of facilitators. Sometimes the only thing they need to plant are posts in the ground, upon which birds might pause to make some deposits before flying along on their transmigrations. From such wastes, whole ecologies emerge. Each island of facilitators nurtures new life while reaching its tendrils out in ever-expanding circles, eventually touching the roots of other such islands until wastelands become paradises. On the slopes of St. Helens, mosses and lichens traveled in and clung to the rocks that had rained down from the sky, further breaking them down into soil. Grasses and other herbaceous plants arrived, stabilizing the ground and preventing erosion. The red alder was the first tree to take root. Like the prairie lupine, the red alder enriched the soil with nitrogen thanks to its symbiotic relationship with root-dwelling bacteria. Its fast-growing canopy provided further shade, cooling the sun-baked ground and creating microhabitats where more delicate species could take hold. Beneath the alders, a diversity of plants began to flourish, from sword ferns to salmonberry shrubs, forming a rich understory that supported ever more insects and birds and small mammals. With the alder, mycorrhizal fungi came as well. Hidden beneath the surface, these fungi formed partnerships with the roots of new trees, exchanging nutrients and water. The fungi helped plants thrive and interconnected the new forest, creating an underground network of communication and support. It was this hidden alliance that allowed conifers, such as Douglas firs, to slowly return to the landscape. And over the decades, the once barren slopes of Mount St. Helens were transformed. What had been a desolate expanse of ash and rock grew into a mosaic of meadows, thickets, and young forests. Elk returned to graze, frogs recolonized the streams, and birds nested in the ever-growing trees. The landscape was not what it had been before the eruption, but it was vibrant and bustling nonetheless, an always evolving ecosystem built on the work of its earliest pioneers and facilitators. So why is this so vital a lesson for the moment we're in? I mean, perhaps part of it is fairly obvious. But I want to introduce another bit. For a long time, scientists have talked about fight and flight as the primary stress responses that humans exhibit when they are confronted by threat or trauma. It turns out this is only a partial picture of human nature. The scientists who first described these stress responses were operating under an unfortunately limited mental model, one which considered all humans to be mostly alike, and yet nevertheless valued one type above all others. Starting with research in 1915 that defined fight or flight as our neat little rhyming pair of stress responses, scientists mostly studied college-aged young men. A couple of other Fs, freeze and fawn, were added over the years as their mental models expanded ever so slightly, but it wasn't until the year 2000 that a team of researchers led by Los Angeles psychologist Shelley Taylor widened the lens dramatically and implemented a new mental model to help us examine whether our human community might have more strategies for stress than just the ones of prey to predator or warrior to warrior that had been described and studied so far. Studying women and people not exclusively on college campuses, as well as social animals, Taylor's team coined a new term for a set of very ancient survival practices that they were able to detect and define. They called these practices tend and befriend. And it turns out these are just as prevalent and just as essential to our survival as fight and flight. Indeed, they sound a lot like what pioneering facilitators do to turn wastelands into wonders of thriving new life. And it is these responses I'm hoping that we will all start to call forth now. I invite you to either close your eyes or let them settle into soft focus on something before you. I invite you to let yourself get comfortable, shifting your body to allow it to settle into a supportive position. As you begin to focus on your breath, I invite you to recognize that you too are an ecosystem. Each of us is made of many parts, and right now you may be feeling many things. As I said before, all responses to this past week are welcome here. All people, all parts. Whether you're feeling buried under meters of ash, in numbness or exhaustion or despair, or perhaps part of you may feel light and aloft upon the breeze like a ballooning spider, eager to see where the wind might carry you. Or perhaps a part is feeling tenacious and ready for challenge, like the prairie lupine colonizing a waste. Whatever it is, wherever you are welcome here. We are all thriving ecologies, and all of our parts are welcome. I invite you to take another deep breath. And try to allow the fullness of how you're feeling, the diversity of your many internal responses to truly be welcome, whatever they are. Biologists clearly like their rhyming pairs. After the surge of adrenaline and cortisol that comes with fight or flight, deep breathing and self-care can activate our parasympathetic nervous systems and turn on the process of rest and digest. This rest and digest system can greatly enhance and facilitate our instinct to tend and befriend. Let us allow each new breath we take this morning to be a pioneer, a facilitator, creating or expanding an island of peace within. Let that peace take root like the prairie lupine and the red alder, the pearly everlasting and the salmonberry shrub. Resilience and renewal begin here in community as together we breathe, together we begin to restore. The more we allow ourselves the grace and the space to heal, the more that grace and space will take root in us and spread. As we rest and digest, as we tend and befriend, we will build back the strength of all living systems to persist and to carry beauty and vitality further out into the world. That is my prayer. But there's no need to rush it. Rushing the recovery of Mount St. Helens would have only crowded out the natural flow. We can simply be at peace being where we are. This is the time in our service where we honor and acknowledge those we hold in our hearts this morning who are not here in this space, those we love who are facing challenges, those we love who are celebrating milestones, and those we love, like Joanne, who have passed away. By saying their names in this space, the TRUU community can hold your sorrow or your joy as well. I invite you to speak those names aloud if you so choose. And for all those who haven't been named, you are also in our hearts. I want to welcome back Olivia and Delaney, Mika and Paul.
a little difference here. All right. Is that good? Our reading today is from Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Despair is paralysis. It robs us of agency. It blinds us to our power and the power of the earth. Environmental despair is a poison every bit as destructive as the methylated mercury in the bottom of Lake Onondaga. But how can we submit to despair when the land is saying, help? Restoration is a powerful antidote to despair. Restoration offers concrete means by which humans can once again enter into a positive, creative relationship with the more than human world, meeting responsibilities that are simultaneously material and spiritual. It's not enough to grieve. It's not enough to just stop doing bad things. We have enjoyed the feast generally laid out for us by Mother Earth, but now the plates are empty and the dining room's a mess. It's time we started doing the dishes in Mother Earth's kitchen. Doing dishes has gotten a bad rap, but everyone who migrates to the kitchen after a meal knows that's where the laughter happens, the good conversations, the friendships. Doing dishes, like restoration, forms relationships. Naturalist E.O. Wilson writes, "There can be no purpose more inspiring than to begin the age of restoration, reweaving the wondrous diversity of life that still surrounds us." The stories are piling up around in scraps of land being restored, trout streams reclaimed from siltation, brownfields turned into community gardens, prairies reclaimed from soybeans, wolves howling in their own territories, school kids helping salamanders across the road. If your heart isn't raised by the sight of whooping cranes restored to their ancient flyway, you must not have a pulse. It is true that these victories are as small and fragile as origami cranes, but their power moves as inspiration. Your hands itch to pull out invasive species and replant the native flowers. Your finger trembles with a wish to detonate the explosion of an obsolete dam that would restore a salmon run. Joanna Macy speaks of the great turning, the essential adventure of our time, the shift from the industrial growth society to a life-sustaining civilization. Restoration of land and relationship pushes that turning wheel. Action on behalf of life transforms, because the relationship between self and the world is reciprocal. It is not a question of first getting enlightened or saved and then acting. As we work to heal the earth heals us.
I wasn't sure how this morning and this service would unfold, where we all would be, where I would be. For weeks, I have been somewhat anxious about it, thinking about how this might come to be, holding off on trying to even begin to define what I might say, trying to be ready to flex. Even that wonderful passage from Braiding Sweetgrass, which feels, on the one hand, so right and so perfect about the process of facilitation and regrowth, also maybe feels not quite, like we might not fully be ready for it yet, because there is still just a time of despair. Susan actually called me yesterday while I was on the road here and shared that she had been part of a special reading group that Florence Caplow does, and that a David White reading on despair was shared. And I looked it up and found it to be absolutely fascinating and appropriate. So I'll offer it as a little bit of a, not in any way a counteraction to what Sally has read, but a counterbalance, a part of the same. David White writes, "The antidote to despair is not to be found in the brave attempt to cheer ourselves up with happy abstracts, but in paying a profound and courageous attention to the body and the breath, independent of our imprisoning thoughts and stories, even strangely in paying attention to despair itself and the way we hold it, and which we realize was never ours to own and to hold in the first place. To see and experience despair fully in our body is to begin to see it as a necessary seasonal visitation. And the first step in letting it have its own life is neither holding it nor moving it on before its time." So all are welcome here, our despair and our call to action. The reflection that I want to share with you is a little bit like an act of nucleated forestry. I'm going to pound a few posts into the ground, and we'll see what shows up. I realize that maybe sounds like I'm inviting birds to poop all over the congregation. I'm not. But at the same time, I hope you'll give me some forgiveness if things are a little rough around the edges as I try to find my way through this exploration. There are 4 posts in particular that I want to plant, and we'll kind of move back and forth between them as whatever is in them begins to grow. The first we'll plant with a quote from Buckminster Fuller, who said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change things, build a new model that makes the existing models obsolete." I'm going to go over here and plant another post. This post, simply going to label us versus them. And I'll plant it with a memory of walking into the tiny little living room apartment where my mother was watching our tiny little rabbit ear topped TV set as election returns came in 1984, and she was so sad. And I was looking at the screen and trying to make sense of where all the pain was coming from, and there was blue and there was red, and the blue people, some of them were losing, Mondale and Ferraro, whereas other blue people in Congress were winning, and I just couldn't quite understand, like, so wait, we're this blue team, but we're winning, but we're losing, what's going on? And I don't remember what she said, but I remember the feeling of walking away with this certainty, like, okay, I have learned an important thing about the world. There is blue that is good and that is losing. There is red that is bad, that is winning. We've got to get the blue back. So we'll leave that post there. Put a post over here. And this one I actually want to rename Raven Song in honor of Olivia's beautiful sharing, Olivia and Delaney's beautiful sharing this morning. Thank you. Initially, I was simply going to describe it as some words from my trans son on election eve when he was sharing with me that he sometimes does not feel fit to be here, not worthy to be here, like he is messed up somewhere deep inside. So that one's called Not Worthy, and we'll come back to that. And then the fourth one I'll put is Ecclesiastes, a beautiful book of the Bible, and a certain quote that is probably familiar to most, if not all of us. just little snippets of here. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. All right, so we've got these 4 posts. I'll go back to the Buckminster Fuller post. I think I put that right here. The Buckminster Fuller post, that new models are necessary. Robin Wall Kimmerer is a member of the Potawatomi Nation. She is also a holder of a PhD and master's from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She has braided together an extraordinarily rich tapestry of folklore and the best modern science, of regenerative forestry and indigenous practices, of myth and modern experimentation. And in her work, she offers a vision of how we can repair by linking all of this, by welcoming all that we are into a weave. And that model works. It works in regenerating ecosystems by giving them the space simply to heal. It is a model that has evolved over a long, long history. Some of that history included, back at the turn of the 20th century, an extraordinary pair of ecologists, Frederick and Edith Clements, who postulated that environments were superorganisms in which species would all interconnect and collaborate to form a collective thriving whole. And this model of ecology was actually the model for the first 30, 40 years of American scientific ecology as it was, until in 1949, which some of you might realize is the start of roughly the Cold War. There was a conference of these ecologists, and a rival group of ecologists led by a guy named Henry Gleason came along and said, that model is silly. There's no such thing as society in nature. There are just individual species that are fighting to survive, and from them, ecosystems just accidentally emerge. And that led to a lot of bad science for several years as people were trained in this model of individualism and fought to prove it and came up with a lot of contradictory numbers. Now, that wasn't the worst science being done in the world at that time. Across on the other side of the Iron Curtain, a guy named Lysenko had convinced Stalin that Darwin was wrong about natural selection and it was all capitalist mumbo-jumbo, and that actually you could re-educate plants if you just shoved them into the right places and the right rows and the right groupings, and they'd learn from each other, which sounded a lot like Stalin's re-education camps, and so he was strongly in favor. And since he, as a totalitarian, ruled the 3 branches of his government, the government itself and its armies, the Communist Party and its cells, the secret police and their many agents, he could by fiat say, yes, Lysenkoism is the way, and he banished the Darwinists and others who were trying to fight for science. And as a result, millions of people, not solely from that, but millions of people starved in famines because they just couldn't understand. That is what bad models can do. So we need good models, models that work. I want to hop over to Ecclesiastes. I read that book for the first time, the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible, for the first time when I was at the Geographic Center of the United States. I was on a journey with a set of journalists to the Chicago Democratic National Convention. This was not this summer, but it was in 1996. Bill Clinton was about to sweep on his way to inevitable victory with a strong economy at his back. The world was definitely a different place then. Free trade ruled. NAFTA and other free trade agreements were making the world ready for American leadership and globalist economics. And we were so excited and lifted up. Francis Fukuyama had written "The End of History is Here" because nations around the world, they may, in little bits and pieces, go back to some totalitarian foolishness, but for the most part, we've all learned there's one right way to run this world, to run our nations, and that's through representative democracies and capitalist economics. It all felt like it was coming together and it made sense. We were on this trip across the heartland, though, and as we got to that geographic center of the United States, it was so quiet. It's just this tiny little chapel on wheels. There was a flagpole and there was a shuttered hotel. And Joel Dyer, who is a man that was with us, the senior journalist, he was really thoughtful and somber as we were at that space, and he said he needed to go for a walk. I went into the chapel and felt a little bit of my future emerging as I stepped up to the podium, and there was this Bible, and there was Ecclesiastes open. I had not actually read Ecclesiastes. I recognized the words I shared with you earlier, but I hadn't read it before that moment. It was calming to me, and again, it fit with just an overall sense of the beauty of the world and things are going to be okay. But Joel was not happy. We got in the car and drove on. By the evening, we were driving through Nebraska over these misty hills. I was driving because the guys had all had some drinks at the bar. And as I was coming down out of a particularly thick bit of mist, a horse walked onto the road. I swerved, just barely missing it, but then overcorrected, and soon we were fishtailing and spinning off the road. I remember this extraordinary piece that happened, though. Joel lifted his hand and put it on my shoulder. He was sitting right behind me, and he looked at me in the rearview mirror. Our eyes met, and he said, "It's going to be okay." Which, at that moment, we could have died in the next moment, and I could feel that he was forgiving me, even if that was what was to come. He was is a beautiful, beautiful soul. Luckily, we came to rest not far from the road because it was kind of a shallow ditch on the other side. But we were all pretty amped up after that. And Joel started sharing what he was working on, a book called Harvest of Rage. And he talked about how in the heartland, people were not happy, and that what we had seen with the bombing of the Alfred Murrah building in Oklahoma City was only the beginning of more rage to come. I'm going to come back to that post in just a little bit. Let's talk about the us versus them post. Jess and I were driving in a perhaps aptly named American Fork Canyon not too long ago, in the weeks before the election. And it was so crowded. We were going up to see some leaves, but so was everyone else in Utah in their big, giant trucks. And I started grumbling and feeling really frustrated and annoyed at all of these Republicans that I was sure were clogging up the road where we were innocently going to be driving to see the leaves, but they shouldn't be with their giant trucks. We had a hybrid SUV, surely we were welcome. So I started ranting a little bit about how annoyed and mad and angry and frustrated and powerless and vengeful and bewildered I was about Republicans. And Jess has authorized me to share this, although this is maybe a dangerous thing to say. She comes from a family of many, many Republicans. And it was a hard thing. It's a hard thing for both of us. Tensions built. And then it just kind of eventually, the day ended and it simmered. I apologized somewhat half-heartedly because, Republicans. But she still felt my condemnation of her family. And by the way, I love her family. They are some of the sweetest, dearest, kindest, most welcoming people that I know. I truly love them, and I'm so thankful that I get to be a part of that family with this amazing human being here. I'm going to go back over to election eve, the Raven Song post. My daughter and I had decided, and I thought my son was in on this, that we were going to watch the election returns. We had made some dinner, and I was coming downstairs last. The two of them were already down there, and I came down to just an eruption as they started yelling at each other, name calling. It was awful, and it all started for the simplest nonsensical thing. My son asked my daughter to turn the TV down. There was a man ranting about, how the election was going, and my son was angry about the horse race journalism, and my daughter felt annoyed that he had snapped at her and his tone was off, and then just escalate. Finally, it blew up in some unfortunate slurs even, which my daughter would not stand behind, but just that came out, and my son, furious, stomped off. And I talked to my daughter about it all, and we kind of sorted through a little bit. She eventually went back. I tried to point out to both of them that, hey, guys, this is not like you think you're fighting about tone. You're fighting because there is so much anxiety in the air. We are feeling so much tension. We have been feeling so much tension for so long. It's driving us crazy. And here we are seeing some not great news coming through. Like, that's what's reflecting. But both of them were still caught up in just the fight itself and who said what and who started what. My son came down later after my daughter had gone up to bed, and he shared with me those words I shared earlier about how he just feels sometimes like he just doesn't fit here. He is terrified about what's ahead with this administration, what it will mean for whether he has the right to continue to work with his body the way he hopes to do, to what the hate that might emerge or be fostered could unleash for him. It's terrifying. We need a new model. This us versus them model that leads me to rant on a drive, that leads my kids to be watching some noise on television and exploding at each other. This us versus them, this I am not worthy pressure is overwhelming. So I've been working a lot on what to do, where to find some healing in all of this. And I realize it goes back to the ecologies that we are, at least for me. Some part of it, at least for me, goes back to the ecology in myself in which there is a deep divide of us versus them. I'm not sure which side is the us and which side is the them, but I train my children to know, to believe that they're not worthy fully, because there are parts of him that don't belong. Growing up and learning about blue versus red was all part of learning all the ways in which the world was wrong, and I needed to be smarter than, better than, the best even, in order to even be okay. I needed to be at the top of every hierarchy I could find myself to the top of to assure myself that I was good enough. I needed to have all the right rules and all the right ways of being, and I needed to self-correct relentlessly when I fell off the track. And I pass that on to my kids. And they feel it deep inside themselves, that there are parts of them that are not welcome, that are not worthy, and if they lean into those broken, messy, stupid parts, just like I believe there's such stupidity and brokenness and messiness on the other side of this artificial divide we've built for ourselves, then somehow we'll be okay if we just overcome our stupidity. I've been spending a lot of time thinking about how odd this us versus them model is when I look at people like Jessica's family and see such love, such beauty. They accept my son, they accept my daughter, they accept me fully with open arms. We share so many interests and so much in common, and yet somehow a vote becomes an identity that allows us to feel like we cannot, or at least that teaches me that somehow there's a part there I cannot touch. And again, it is tied to parts of me that cannot be anything less than perfect all the time. which I can see rippling into my children, such that they blow up sometimes at the slightest things because the pressure on them to be so perfect is so unrelenting. When Joel Dyer was talking to me about what was wrong in the heartland and what led to the bombing of the Federal Center in Oklahoma City, he talked about how for years farmers had been sold by bankers and lawyers this idea that they needed to upscale their agriculture, they needed to buy all the latest equipment, all the latest bioengineered ingredients and seeds, and plant them and change all their fields, their whole models, until they got so far and deep into debt that they lost farms and land that had been in their families for generations to these large corporations that swept in. All of them, they felt, were coming from the top of the pyramid, from the perfect ones who were running everything and making everything just so, who were so smart, who were so clear on what could be done and what had to be done, but who didn't know them at all. As Jess and I were driving up just last night, we've been working through this for a while, and she again authorized me to share our messy underside. But one of the things that came so clear was that after that little blow up in the canyon, I apologized, but most of what I wanted was for her to just be okay and for it to be okay. And clearly my intentions are good, because part of what I can't stand being is someone who would hurt anyone else's feelings. I can't allow her to be hurt, because then that means I hurt her. And that would make me not okay as a human being. So I gave her no space to heal. I didn't want to hear the pain she felt about me saying that her family was like Hitler supporters. Admittedly, I got a little hot. Her family is beautiful. We all are, and we all have ways of falling for craziness and wildness because our ideologies take over for our common sense and our ability to observe and be present with what is. I think right now we have to get so present with what is. The work I've been doing this week is just trying to say, okay, you know what? I have done my best to be the smartest person I can be. I've learned all the things from all the books I can possibly do. I keep getting, great test scores and anything else that'll just ratchet me up above all those people I was in school with who are, stupid and Republican. I'm going to be better. I barely know how to work a garden. I definitely don't know how to repair a house. There is so much that I don't know how to do because I'm so smart in those few areas. The truth is, I'm really, really, really stupid. Really. There's so much I don't know. There are so many people that I hurt inadvertently. So yeah, I'm kind, but I'm also cruel. If I cannot allow the people close to me to allow me to be who I am, then it's like paving over that whole area around Mount St. Helens after the disaster and planting rows and rows of trees that we're going to re-educate into being just what we need them to be to save that space. No, we know how to heal if we can allow truth to be present. Creating space for Jess to be seen that it really hurt when I talked about her family that way. Creating space for my children to be okay feeling messy at times. And creating space for myself to be stupid and unkind at times. To me, this seems the only path forward, the only model that could possibly make sense. I think I just want to close by rereading David White's The antidote to despair is not to be found in the brave attempt to cheer ourselves up with happy abstracts, but in paying a profound and courageous attention to the body and the breath, independent of our imprisoning thoughts and stories. Even strangely, in paying attention to despair itself and the way we hold it, and which we realize was never ours to own and to hold in the first place. To see and experience despair fully in our body is to begin to see it as a necessary seasonal visitation, and the first step in letting it have its own life, neither holding it nor moving it on before its time.
And now we'll have some special music by our musicians, Under the Tree by Olivia Pebeck.
One of the reasons we chose this song is because it has a really easy chorus, so we hope that you will all join us. Bed down under this tree with me. Bed down under this tree. Bed down under this tree with me, and we will set our worries free. Full moon shining in the sky tonight. There's a full moon tonight. There's a full moon shining in the sky tonight, and we won't need no other light. Bed down under this tree with me. Bed down under this tree. Won't you bed down under this tree with me? We will set our worries free. Wolves won't come howling around our door. Wolves won't come round no more. No, the wolves won't come howling around our door, 'cause we ain't got no door no more. Bed down under this tree with me. Bed down under this tree. Won't you bed down under this tree with me? We will set our worries free. Ain't got nothing in this world that's mine, nothing to call my own. Oh, I never had nothing in this world that's mine, but we can make this tree our home. Bed down under this tree with me. Bed down under this tree. Bed down under this tree with me, and we will set our worries free. Let's do it again. Bed down under this tree with me. Bed down under this tree. Won't you bed down under this tree with me? We will set our worries free. Come on, let's set our worries free. Oh, we gonna set our worries free.
We will now receive an offering for the support of this religious community and its work in the world. You're invited to give generously and joyfully as you are willing and able. Online, you can make a secure donation by giving to truu.org and clicking on the offering plate image at the bottom of the home page. You can also mail your pledges to the address shown in the slide, or if you're here, put them in the offering plates as we pass it this morning. And as always, we are so grateful for your generosity. And now our offering. Please rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn, 1068, Rising Green.
Sap doth run in my veins, boundless my soul, like the open sky, where the stars forever have lain. Where the stars, where the stars, where the stars forever have lain. All the weavings of time without end, my side as deep as the sea, beating my heart sounds the measures of old, of the love's eternity, that of love, that of love, that of love's eternity. I feel the tides as they answer the moon, rushing on a far distant sand. Winging my song is the wind of my breast, and my love blows over the land. And my love, and my love, and my love blows over the land. My foot carries days of the old into new. Our dreaming shows us the way. Wondrous our faith settles deep in the earth, rising green to bring a new day. Rising green, rising green, rising green to bring a new day.
Extinguishing the chalice. The words of our chalice extinguishing are by Elizabeth Sell Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fires of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
My brief benediction is Perhaps that this is not clear, this is not easy, this is not simple or straightforward, but it is the work in front of us. And I do believe as we use this time to reflect back on us, where we are broken inside, where we are lacking or longing or hurting inside, and we pay attention to those wounds, to that hurt, we allow the parts and the feelings to be, I do believe that healing will come and that we will become the facilitators of spreading love against the force of an old, bad model of us versus them that is simply not tenable anymore. I invite you to go in peace and love and community.
Please rise in body or spirit and join hands for our sending forth song, One World Home.
All the joys and the griefs, the colors and beliefs, the sunlight shines upon us all the same. Open minds, loving hearts, helping hands, it's a start. One world home, one world home, one world home. Open minds, loving hearts, helping hands, it's a start. One world home, one world home, one world home. One world home, one world home, one world home.
Please join us for coffee.